Welcome to Couch Church, where we take the plastic off of the living room furniture. That's right, we're sitting on grandmama's couch so we can discuss the issues at the crossroads of Christ and culture. Hey everybody, welcome to another edition of Couch Church, where we take the plastic off of the living room furniture. That's right, we sitting on grandmama's couch because we're going to deal with these hard-hitting issues at the intersectionality or the crossroads of Christ and culture. Today we are continuing our discussion, March Madness, mental health matters, and we are joined today again by Lady Ebony. Hey, Lady Ebony.
Hey, Pastor.
How you doing?
I'm doing good today.
You look like you learned a lot from last week's episode.
I did. I even put on my little neck brace sweater, so just in case I'd be like, look, like what? What are you talking about? I'm gonna keep it together today. This will keep me straight.
That's your boundary.
That's my boundary. I gave myself a chokehold today.
We are also joined by Crystal and India. What's up, fam?
Hello.
How y'all doing today?
I feel good.
I'm good, excited.
You look like you got a new attitude.
Yeah.
That's how I Feeling much better.
You feeling much better.
Yeah.
You need to have a one of them wasu moments. Is that what it's called?
No.
Isn't it wasu?
No, you said it so
Woosah.
bad. You made
Yeah,
me forget what the real word was. I was like, no, that ain't
No.
I was like, so you know about the woosahs.
Woosah.
Breathe in. Breathe out. What are you feeling in your fingers, in your toes?
Dr. J,
Breathe
come on in
in.
this conversation.
He putting all that arrow together.
Breathe out. That's
He done got a new certificate.
And back on the couch with us is Dr. Joanne Frederick. Thank you for joining us again, Dr. J. How you doing today?
Y'all have me laughing. Tears coming out my eyes. I'm trying to maintain with the laughter. I'm having a good time.
You know what they say, laughter is good for the soul.
Yes, it is. That's all I do.
My grandma would say, I gotta laugh in order to stop crying, to keep from crying. So we know that laughter is good. And so, as y'all know from last week, Dr. J is back with us. Today we're talking about mental health stigmas in the Black community, and we're going to ground this conversation in Scripture. Our Scripture reference is Isaiah chapter 41, verse 10. Here's what it says. Do not fear, for I am with you. I will help you. I will uphold you with my righteous right hand. When I hear this scripture, what conveys to me is that God is always with us, and God is there to provide God's strength and God's comfort, even during the most difficult times in our lives. And through God's love and God's grace, God is able to help us overcome mental health struggles and even to find the place of possibility no matter what we have to go through. One of the ways that God shows us how God cares, of course, for you and I, is through Scripture. It's through prayer. It's through worship. It's being a part of a local assembly where we gather with other peoples of like-minded faith. But it's also through a great therapist, access to medication, time with him, a good support system, and a host of other things. And so we want to jump right into the discussion today because too often the stigmas keep us from gaining access to the services that we need in order to live a more productive and harmonious life. Dr. J, I'm going to jump right into it because we don't want to assume that everybody knows what a stigma is. Help us define stigma in some layman's term so that we can be able to identify what they are.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for the question. So we hear people use the word, mental health stigma. What does stigma mean? Stigma is a negative association by individuals or society at large for certain things that's related to mental health, like substance abuse disorder, trauma, anxiety, depression. Normally, those are the four main things we have this stigma against. So, if someone has been diagnosed with any of those or struggling with any of those, it's negative. That means that this person stay away from them or don't talk to them, don't be in a relationship with them. Don't and those stigmas prevent that individual from seeking help, from even talking about this is what they're dealing with.
I'm thinking because in my work with some government agencies around behavioral health, I recognize how terminologies are changing. So where we once said substance abuse, is substance use,
Yes, substance use disorder.
right?
Yes.
Rather than a substance abuse, which has this negative twist
Yeah.
on it, then it has a stigma attached to it where people don't want the service because you're focusing on the negative aspect
Exactly.
of whatever it is I'm going through.
Correct. And people don't even want to identify with that. So we even call that a self stigma. Because so stigmas could be from society and other individuals, and also what we put on ourselves, our own bias and beliefs about things that we ourselves are struggling with.
Have you all ever dealt with any stigmas?
I think when it comes to mental health issues, one thing that I've heard a lot, like when I was kind of going through, is you're not being strong enough, like pushing past it, saying almost like you're weak. If you like, weakness is always associated with seeking help when it comes to like seeing a therapist or something like that. So, and I hate that, especially when I hear it geared towards our young black men. So just hold it inside, because if you show it, then weakness is always associated with it.
Yes,
It was my generation. So just being raised in the 80s and 90s, people just don't believe in going to seek therapeutic services. So now they support, now they can see the difference. But at first, quite frankly, a lot of people that I had surrounded myself with couldn't understand why I sought services. So, yeah.
And for me, it was with my son. Like, they was like, he's only 2. Why are you taking him to go see a therapist? He eventually grow out of it type stigma going on. I was like, no, there's something there, and he's going to have to learn how to adjust and have healthy coping strategies while he's figuring out life. And so it was like, you're taking him to a therapist, he's only 2. I was like, yes.
Well, because you are an educator.
Yes. And I knew that things were not matching up, like social behaviors. And I was like, yes, and he can talk and he's very intelligent. But I said, when he's triggered or when he's literally going through trauma, he's in a crisis state, you get these bizarre behaviors that are not typical, that needs to be addressed now before he is a teenager. And I'm trying to figure out what to do with him.
That's amazing you could identify that
Yeah.
at 2 years old. It's almost like, when as you were saying that, I was thinking, how did you know to identify? Because sometimes in life we do just think, oh, they're just kids, or they're just acting out, or when does the oh, they're just become, no, this is even for ourselves, this is an issue.
I went
It's
to
a pattern.
parenting.
It's a
parenting groups. I participated with other parents who were going through similar things that I was going through, and just speaking with other people. And people's like, "Why you go to parenting classes? It's no, I don't have a manual to
The
this."
stigma attached to seeking
Yeah.
help, like
I need to
yeah.
know coping mechanisms, what I can do, what I could put in place, and what I need to change as a parent to help my child through this, especially during the pandemic.
Yeah.
Especially during the pandemic.
I'll say there's also a stigma against crying. We're not supposed to cry,
Right.
especially a man, especially a black man.
That's right.
You can't cry. And so if someone is dealing with depression and they're sad all the time and they're lonely and they cry or want to cry, they hide themselves from crying, because if I cry, it means that I'm weak. When crying is expressing an emotion that needs to come out, it's okay to cry.
How do you see, like, in your body of work, especially because we put that so much on our young men, how have you seen in the long term that has the effect that it has had on that with them not crying, and then you see these grown men walking around that have never. What have you seen in that?
Yeah, what I see is them walking around with pain, and the pain turns into anger, and then the anger is violence. So when we see people robbing, stealing, hijacking, cursing, carrying on, maybe even a short temper, all of that relates to the pain that they're going through, whatever it is, that they haven't had a chance to express it appropriately and be accepted while they express their pain.
I tell you, I think Scarface says it best when he says, "You never see a man cry
So you say the man.
till you seen a man die." And I think that is both literal and figuratively. That if you want to see a black man cry, go to a funeral of somebody that he loved, and that may be the only time where his emotions are uncontrollable. Right. The other is more literal. That at the point in which a black man decides to die to self, and to die to the expectations that the world and society has placed on him, the tears are of joy. One is of sadness, and the other ones are joy, because now I'm free from the burden of expectations that other people have placed on me my whole life.
I can only imagine how that feels that you can't cry. Like, how does that feel as a black man and you can't cry? Like, you just hold it in.
Yeah.
What
Now, we
happens?
raise our children not to cry. As soon as we see a child crying, especially a little black boy, what do we tell them?
Stop that.
Stop
that.
that cry.
I
Take
don't.
it.
I don't.
Suck it up.
I do not, because I learned differently.
Right.
I learned to ask them, what's wrong?
Yeah.
Let's work through this.
Yes.
Calm down. What
Yeah.
can we do? Like, I've learned different techniques.
Yeah.
And I do pat my daughter up if she's crying and calm her down.
Yeah.
But I see a lot of people who do not parent like
Yeah.
that.
Well, let me tell you what else we do that sends the message, stop crying. And this is a therapeutic thing we've learned. Don't give them tissue. When we give somebody tissue, they're crying, we're saying wipe it up, clean that up.
Quickly.
You allow them, and don't talk to them either. You allow them to let that out. Sometimes even when we hug,
Dr.
we're saying,
J.
Yeah. Let me tell you what I
Them kids'
saw.
tears be messy though.
I saw this the other day, right? I was in the store, and I guess he was like 2 years old, little boy, was running around the store, and he hit his head on the display. His father, probably about 30 years old, little boy, boom, you heard it. He crying. He jacks him up.
Oh, man, I would've
Stop crying. Didn't I tell you stop running around in this store? Set him down in a chair and then gave him his cell phone
to distract
to
from that
distract
feeling,
from the feeling, the hurt, the shame, whatever.
So what does that look like in the long run? Because it's interesting, I'm curious to see. So every time that person cries or goes through something, instead of addressing it, it's met with something.
Yeah.
So for him,
Something to do.
it's the phone. But I'm curious, like, what does that look like in relationships with that person? And
I don't think it was more so about the phone because the phone was a distraction for the crime, so he can continue shopping.
Yeah, yeah.
Right, but I mean,
Right.
if it's not a phone, something else, but he's
Yes.
still giving him something for that.
Yeah. So, and part of it is embarrassment, right? Dad may be embarrassed. You're embarrassing me because you're running. I told you to stop. That's your punishment. But what it looks like as you grow up, now we need other things to comfort when we get hurt, whether it's physically
Right.
or emotionally. And what are the things people do and use for comfort? Substances, sex,
People.
pornography, people, gambling, technology, video gaming, food.
So you indulge. So every time that person,
And I think
instead of crying, they
it's
would
a
get something.
overindulgence too because
Yeah.
we can look at it in terms of individuals who work out.
Yes, that's another one.
Right.
Exercising.
And so people who go to
Yes.
go to the gym and
Yep.
and they come
Work
out a
it
year
out.
later looking like a muscle man.
That hasn't been one of my vices.
That hasn't, man.
Nah, see,
That might be an improvement. I mean,
I've tried it.
That
It just
ain't
didn't.
work.
It didn't work out for me. I wasn't committed to it. I wasn't But
I went
so
to the refrigerator. That was fine. I didn't go to the gym, but yeah.
well, the Bible talks about, we talk about, some of these stigmas, gluttony.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so really what it is the overindulgence,
Yes.
Yeah.
right?
No balance.
There's the absence of balance. As it relates to the black community, how do we begin to address the stigmas? Because if we don't, then they're going to just remain and impact future generations.
Yeah. We address it by normalizing everything. We talked earlier, what is normal? Normal means that it's okay. It's okay that you've had a traumatic experiences. It's okay that, you're dealing with anxiety. Everyone deals with
Everyone
anxiety.
does. We
It's
just mask
okay
it.
that you're feeling depressed today or seasonal or for a long period. That's okay. But we need help when it's a certain thing happening. So if it's a long period, 3 months or more, if it's having an impact on work, relationships, family, we need more support.
So how does that normalization show up in other communities?
Okay, well, in other communities, and you're referring to communities that's not black and brown.
Correct.
How it shows up, they talk about it. There's poster boards. There's education about it. There's conversations. There are resource towards whatever the issue is, and the resources are financial, and any other type of resource, and that's how it looks in other
The
communities.
support.
There's support.
Moving from Ward 8 to Ward 6, that's the biggest difference that I see is the community that's being built in Ward 6. But the reason why you can build a community in something like Ward 6 versus Ward 8, I'm talking about your neighbors, is because you're not fearful to come outside. You're not fearful to have community meetings. You're not talking about violence. You're talking about how we're going to finance the PTA. So, some of the stuff that I see is so unreal. I'm like, where the real stuff? Because, again, those are two different spectrums. You got Southeast. One is Southeast in Ward 8, and then you have another Southeast. So you're not fearful, or you're not living in fear, or the economic disparity.
level is very
Yeah,
different.
so it's different.
Yeah, the affordability.
Here's some other ways they show up differently. They're communicating in groups with each other. They're trusting each other. We don't trust each other. But we also know it's not our fault why we don't trust each other. I'm talking historically, right? We were trained not to trust the next person. But that is ways how they show up differently than we do.
And not only were we trained not to trust the next person, our experience taught us not to trust medical professionals.
Correct.
And so
Ooh, yes.
some of the challenges that I've come across is I can't find anybody who looks like me to provide services.
Yes.
And if I can find somebody who looks like me, I can't find a male that looks like me. And if I find somebody who looks like me and I find somebody who's a male like me, I can't find somebody who's Afrocentric in their approach to therapy. So they're still using
You just took it down to 1%.
yeah.
At that point, that last one, I'm like, ooh, that's
Yeah,
gonna be a hard one.
and so the
Yeah.
methodology, the systems, the approaches that they're using are not geared or germane for us as a people, and so that becomes a challenge to me, as a black man who wants to be centered in an Afrocentric spirituality, right, as it relates to dealing with my own mental health. I don't know where to go. It's hard, right? And yeah, it's just hard. And so the stigmas on itself are on so many different levels, right? And there's so many barriers that you have to navigate, so many systems you have to work through you can, and then you can find somebody in the calendar full for 6-7 months.
My question to you, Vivi, though, because you speak for so many people, what do you do? How have you been navigating this space? Because you're in a position, like many others, whether you're an educator, whether you're in the pulpit, whether you're in leadership, your responsibility is leading, caring, and guiding. So for those particular who you are like, have your same voice, What is it? What do you do?
Yeah, so it's important to establish communities,
Right.
to talk about different aspects of your life. So for me, I have a group of pastors that I can go to, and then we meet on a regular basis, right? And not to say we sit around and lay out our issues, but to be in the presence of other African American men who are in my profession and in my calling. There is a point of connectivity between all of us.
A safe
And
space.
so the safe space, but we can also say a lot without saying nothing.
So creating that space.
Creating the space
Creating
is
what you
important.
need.
But I may also have another group of non-pastors that I can deal with issues. You know, I got a couple of other cats that I hang with who are married. And we go out. And when we go out, we talk.
I already know what you're talking about. As you said, after we were without the
You know,
wives, but we encourage it. The good thing is,
I mean,
being
but-
who supports you, that person going out and recognizing I can't be that place for you.
Yes.
I don't have the capability or the capacity or the
Yes.
experience, so I need you to be around that group.
What
So-
happens when you have men who don't experience that and don't
That's-
feel comfortable and create their world around you,
And you become that.
and you become their shoulder,
That
that
shoulder.
comfort zone, that therapist.
Yes.
And then that becomes that weight on your shoulder that's weighing you down.
Yes,
So,
yes. I see what you're saying. That the partner has to carry that weight. Is that what you're referring
Yes,
to?
correct.
Yeah. One of the things I think is important, and that's what you're referring, is that we can't get everything we need from one person.
Yeah.
We need
Come
different
together.
groups, different people to pour in. I look at it like, think of all your friends you have, right? You may have some friends that you can have dinner with. And that's what y'all do. You have dinner, you talk about the food, but you would never tell that friend your deepest, darkest secret.
Right.
But you got another friend that you tell your deepest, darkest secret, and you don't even see them but so often.
Them
Right.
usually be the
Right.
ones you talk maybe 3 times a year. Girl, I
Yes.
need you right now.
But you gotta recognize that your support is from different people. And the partner, we have to tell our partner that, help them understand, baby, I can't do that.
yeah.
And here's the other place that I go to because I recognize the absence of African American therapists in my community, not just in my local community, but also in my broader community. I now spend more time at the local barbershop.
Uh-huh.
I noticed it was something different every time I called you. You was in a barbershop.
I was in a barbershop.
Always.
Yeah, because that
One
is.
time his hair wasn't even cut when he came back. I was like, "You
Right,
not going
yeah.
to go."
Socializing.
Yeah,
Right.
I have to go because I began to look back. You know, my dad used to take me to the barbershop. Saturday, you would spend 4-5 hours in the barbershop. You know, then they start creating appointments, slots. So now you in and out in 30 minutes, right? And for me, I identified that I lost a sense of connection to other men, other black men in particular. So post pandemic, I said,
Yeah.
I ain't doing no more 30-minute appointments in a barber shop because this pandemic showed me the importance of being around other black men across the spectrum. So now I go to the barber shop, I spend 2-3 hours and I go get me a slice of pizza. I got a routine. I go get me a slice of pizza. I get me a canned Coke. I go to the barber shop and I sit down and I eat and I drink and I talk it up with every man that comes in there. And we talk about everything. We ain't just talking about women. We talk about health. We talk about prostate cancer. We talk about high blood pressure. You know, we talk about sugar diabetes. You know, we talk about how to eat more healthier. You know, and we having all of these conversations that we would not have had if it were not for the barbershop. Right?
Yes.
Right. And so I always encourage people now, get away from appointments. Your day ain't that busy. Spend a couple of hours in the barbershop. Because I think
wish women could.
women do that, right?
No.
Not on purpose.
No.
I mean,
Well,
It's
I'll
not
say
people-
what I can say is in my training, one of the first service providers that we've been trained on and who they are barbers, hairdressers, pastors.
Yeah.
There's
Oh,
other
wow.
service providers that
Right.
and bartenders. We were talking about that earlier.
absolutely.
Just the space and the person that's kind of there listening.
Yeah.
And you're doing self-care in between all of that,
All
right?
in
You know how you
between.
feel when you get something done.
Oh yeah, last
Yeah.
week Lady Ebony spoke about how much her self care was,
Yes,
her routine,
yes.
with her nails and her pedicure.
It's important.
yeah, I go.
And
I
she
go
looks
to the,
good.
I go to the barber shop. I get my hair cut.
Yes.
I lay back. I get a hot towel facial.
Yes.
You know,
So let me ask you, were you doing that pre-pandemic?
no.
Interesting. Okay.
No,
you had
I
to
wasn't.
create that space.
You're right. I incorporated all of these other services
Yes.
when I get my hair cut.
Yes.
And like Lady Ebony said, sometimes if I got some time, I'll go into the barber shop and just sit. Barber like, hey man, you were just in here last week. Yeah,
Yeah.
I know, man. I'm just kicking the breeze.
So to me, what you're talking about, you're destigmatizing self-care and self-help. Because that is part of what we're talking about, right? Mental health care. How do you care for yourself?
Yeah.
I think part of this conversation, like as I'm thinking about it and what we do, there are and I don't want to say slightly a privileged conversation, but there are so many communities, when I think of some of our young Black boys, who don't, as we talk about this, who can't do that, who aren't in that safe of an environment. And then we were talking about suicide, and surprisingly the number of suicides that are going up in the Black community is alarming.
Yes.
How do we even reach that group who they don't have the ability to be able to do what we do?
Yes. Well, what I would say about that, the suicide rate, you're right, is high. And part of it is that feeling of not being accepted. And also some of it is mental health as well. And so one of the things we see in the community is not being accepted. So our youth, let's say a young Black boy who is part of the LGBTQIA community, as
Right.
Black people raising children, we don't want to hear that. Don't talk about it. Don't. So then what? What are they supposed to do? So they'll create their own community if they live to a certain age. But the highest suicide rate that we're seeing is amongst the community and not feeling accepted. But also the mental health issues, right? Depression can be to the point that it can tell you, no one cares about me, no one loves me, nobody will miss me. Let me just do this.
And not only do your
sometimes-
parents say don't talk about it, but the church kick you out.
Yeah, oh yeah, definitely. The church is not accepting that conversation. Some churches, not all. I think we are moving forward. But that's
There's a
all about
change coming,
diversity.
right?
Yeah.
Diversity. That's what that is. So whatever the diversity is that we have to accept and meet people where they are.
No judgment, no shame, just love.
That's our motto.
Yeah, but it's a challenge. As we talk about the stigmas in institutions, again, we can't leave out the religious institutions. And a part of those stigmas that are in place is because how we have treated people in the past that makes them shun the medical community or shun and not want to be a part of the religious. And so we have to create these safe spaces for people, right, where they can engage in a place that, where they are respected and even protected.
I saw recently, and it was so amazing. I don't know if I sent it to you. It was this post that went viral. And I believe the church was doing a demonstration. So the pastor's wife came up and was telling everyone, this is why you need to go to church, right? She was saying, you need to do this is what the scripture does. And then she handed the mic to a young lady. And the young lady, that's how I know it was a demonstration, the young lady went down the list of why I don't want to be here and how I feel like I'm judged when I come in here and how I go through the same things and I don't have anybody to talk to and how I need the church to show me their hands because you go through the same thing that I went through. And the post went viral, but I was looking at the comments of those who had watched it, and they were talking about all these issues of depression, and they came to the church and they wanted to find relief, but they didn't get that. They were met with, you not wearing the right thing when you come through the door. I don't like your lifestyle, so come back, check yourself first. And so I'm happy though that we are seeing more churches, though I will say this because I don't want to go hard on the churches, that are now kind of realizing that and pivoting and saying, you know what, baby, come on in.
Dress down.
Right, dress down, right?
Come as you
So
are.
you don't have to have that Sunday. You ain't got to spend so-and-so on the outfit before you come through the doors. I know you've been through this. You just got out that bed. Okay, well, come on in here and let us minister and love on you. Because so much of this, when you talked to, when I was looking at the comments, they didn't feel loved. So they sought other communities that really didn't love them, but just satisfied that itch that they may have had at the time.
So we understand the potential risk of not addressing, mental health stigma, suicide or self-harm, the feeling of rejection and neglect, to walk away from communities that you are a part of. So let's talk a little bit about how do we begin to put resources in the Black community so in order to remove the stigmas that are attached around mental health. How do we begin to remove those stigmas?
So our first resource is ourselves. And one of the things we can do, which many people don't know how to do, is listen. And you don't just listen to what people say. We listen to what they don't talk about. And we watch their behaviors. That's how we listen. That's the first resource. Because everyone needs something different.
Exactly.
What y'all think about that? Sounds like it has you thinking like,
Well, you mentioned talk therapy. I know one of the things that we did during the pandemic with you at Centerpoint Baptist Church is that for our seniors, we created the art therapy Bible study.
That was so much fun.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
It was actually called, it was called Art and Soul Bible Study.
That's right.
But we brought in via Zoom clinicians, and people were able to color and draw and paint. And what they did not realize initially is that they were actually in a group therapy session.
Exactly.
Until the practitioners came on and said, listen, my name is such and such. This is what I do for a living. This is what we're going to address. And I think for our seniors, that was something that was they look forward to on a weekly basis. I jumped in on some of them.
I
catching on my lunch break. I was like, this is not fair. I felt like, what am I?
So it's an example of another nonprofit organization I belong to. One of the mental health, service projects we're going to be doing is we're buying coloring books for youth, seniors, and adolescents, and the crayons, the markers, the pencils, color, and we're donating it to different organizations. So what you're referring to is that just that coloring is therapeutic, and it tells a story. So sometimes in therapy, if I have people who don't have the words to express, we color, and then I ask them to describe what you just did here, and they'll talk about it, and that helps as well.
Well, keep us in mind, because that's what we did. We went over to Dollar Tree when Dollar Tree was still $1.
It's not anymore.
And we bought coloring books and we bought crayons. And then we did a drive-by for our members to come and to pick them up. I just had an idea. Y'all know I always get these ideas. Everybody's into the sipping paints. Right? Imagine if churches and community, we created these spaces, not necessarily about the sipping the champagne, but with the painting and therapy.
That'd be nice.
As
people coming to that.
Yeah.
Don't tell you all your ideas.
Let's do it.
Don't tell
That's
all
all
your
right.
ideas.
That's all right. God gives the vision and the provision.
Yes, He does.
But I think there's so many creative things that we can do
To bring people in.
to bring
Yeah.
people in, to connect people to a new sense of community where, again, they may not come, Dr. J, to your office for a group therapy session, but they will come to a local community center
Yes.
for a sip and paint.
Definitely. And we have to meet people where they are.
Absolutely.
Wherever they're in the school, we do it. If they are on the street, we go out and service. So when I used to work at a university, HBCU actually, in the counseling center, my number started going up because we would track all the therapists and who's seeing more people, and mine was high. They would ask me, how'd you get your numbers high? Guess what I started doing? Leaving the office and walking across the bridge. And when I walk across the bridge, they're like, hey, that's Miss Patrick. I wanted to come to the office, and I just stood right on the bridge and listened, and we worked and meeting them where they are, wherever people are. That's
cool.
another resource.
That's another resource. Come on, y'all. What's some resources? Let's get this thing cracking.
So when we hear resources, people always think finances.
Yeah,
Right? Okay,
yeah.
finances is a resource. We can do that too. What if we gave or gifted people a session, counseling sessions? Whether it's pro bono or somebody sponsoring them to have a certain amount of sessions that they will pay for.
That is good.
Resources, finances. What are the barriers?
That's a
The-
good
the-
gift.
the-
If people will use it, that's
About to
another.
say the barriers, if that's the Christmas gift.
Right, I'm thinking
So-
that if
so
somebody
like-
gave you that as a Christmas gift,
They're
hey
like-
girl,
they're
I
like- They-
wanted to do it, but I didn't feel comfortable doing it.
But and I think
And it
what-
should be an agreement,
Right.
Because this person need to be like, yeah, I need this.
But what you find happening
want
more in the black community are the coaching practices.
You see that?
So individuals are providing more
life coach,
life coach, and people are going to life coaches, right? But I'm glad they're going to somebody. Life coaching is not the same as therapy and counseling.
The license
But it can
ain't the
help.
same.
No, I mean
Yeah.
it's not designed. It's not designed to be the same. It's totally separate. What I'm saying is at least a first step of a person who's saying, I need some help.
I need some help.
Yes.
And and so whether it's and so even in faith, there are faith-based life coaching practices, right? And so all of these, I think, are steps and resources that we need to take more advantage of and find ways of how we bring them to the community. Dr. J, as you said, we got to meet people where they are. We can no longer be the institution or the building or the ministry or the office as if we're the beacon on the hill.
Yes, yes.
And everybody sees us and everybody wants to come be with us.
Right.
We got to come down off our hill and go down into the valley where the people are so that we can give them the resources that they
Yep.
need.
Two more resources I can think of too.
Okay.
Books. There's a lot of knowledge in books, and books can be cheap. So sometimes, for example, if I'm working with people with low self-esteem, we actually find a workbook that deals with low self-esteem, what it is, what it looks like, and activities to build that. We call that cognitive behavioral therapy. And thus, when I wrote we wrote Copology, that's what it was about. Everyone can't afford therapy financially.
Right.
But we'll pay $20 for a book and read in the privacy of our home and learn. That was another resource I thought of. And the second one, I don't remember what it was. What was the second one?
That was exactly.
Well, listen, this is the best one, Copeology. Everywhere books are sold, make sure you go to Amazon.com and order your copy. Y'all mind if I read another excerpt? I feel so blessed.
As you look for the chapter, I do want to say another thing I was thinking of is one of the most powerful things we can do is to speak life. Right? The word says life and death is in the tongue. And so a lot of times when you talk with people, I've had family members and friends who've gone through a lot of issues, mental health issues, but a lot of times when we dig right down to it, it goes back to what someone has said over them or not said or made them feel a certain kind of way, but that dealt with how they were spoken to or not spoken to.
Yes.
Right? So having communication or the lack of it being ignored or rejected in life. And so just on an easy level basis, I think we need to begin to speak life into young people, because then I've met older people who you say, well, what sustained you? And they always go back to this one incident. You know, when I was a certain age, I'll never forget that teacher who told me I could, and they didn't know what I was facing at home. Or that friend, you don't know how good that call felt on a day when I was praying and saying, God, I don't know what to do. And you just happened to call out the blue to check on me. Like, we've got to learn to check in on people and see past what, whatever this looks like, to say, what's going on? Or not even ask, let me take you to get something to eat. Or,
And you know what I'll add too? When we have wrong people, we also have to learn to apologize. I didn't know better back then. I'm sorry.
Come on,
That's
learn.
That's it.
And
Learn how
some
to
people
apologize.
also want you to do something instead of apologizing. How can you make up for it?
Yeah. Here's what I want to do. Dr. J, rather than me reading an excerpt, can you read one to close us out?
I sure can.
All right. I'm going to hand you the book, and
This is the one I was going to read.
look at God.
Yeah.
Won't he do it?
Okay, I'll read this. Okay, I'm going to read two parts of it. One is about me. It's called The Power of Prayer, and then there's a short story to it. Okay, there it is. All right. The Power of Prayer. I was born and raised in Brooklyn, New York. Yes, thus the accent. This is and attended high school in New Jersey. Both of my parents are from the Twin Islands, Trinidad and Tobago. Thus, I am first-generation American. Like most Caribbean people, they are very spiritual and religious people, where Seventh-day Adventists, Roman Catholics, Muslims, and Hindus comprise the largest population throughout the Caribbean countries. As a young child, my early introduction to religion began in the Pentecostal church on Sundays, but during the week I attended Catholic school and Mass on Wednesdays. Clearly a contrast and conflict in terms of beliefs. However, the differences piqued my interest, resulting in a plethora of questions. Which religion is the right one? I asked religious leaders in both denominations and didn't quite seem to get the answer I was looking for. Eventually, I began to feel like there was no right or wrong religion, but that it was a way for people to deal with stresses of life, embracing rules and guidelines, and embracing the practicing morals, values, and ethics. So that's just a little bit about me, what made me come up with the book in terms of merging faith and self-care, counseling, and psychology. Can I read the
You certainly
story?
can.
Okay, here's the story. This is me. As an adult, I remember the day that I could not help my oldest child with a wish he had. He was around 12 years old, playing football with the local community center. He had a big game that he was preparing, playing in his most desired position. One evening, he turned to me and said, "Ma, I wish Daddy can come to my game." At that time, his dad and I were separated, and he lived in another state. There was no way that I could make his dream come true, so I turned to him and said, "Son, all we can do is pray on it." So he closed his burgundy brown eyes, and we prayed. We asked for his dad to come and see his game one day. Well, lo and behold, fast forward, within the same week, by that weekend, his dad caught a flight into Baltimore and was in attendance at the football game. That was the moment that my son learned the power of prayer. The lesson to be learned? Sometimes in life things happen, such as divorce, separation, and even death, that can take a psychological toll on you and loved ones. However, when we pray and we ask for exactly what we want, believe in it, and be open and ready to receive it, it will happen.
Amen.
We want to say thank you for joining us today for another edition of Couch Church, where we take the plastic off of the living room furniture. Come back, join us next week as we continue in March Madness Mental Health Matters. Be sure to join us on all of our social media platforms at Couch Church DMV. Until next time, may God bless you, may the Lord keep you, and may heaven continue to smile upon you. Peace.